What if a single moment of kindness could change everything? In the corner booth of Murphy's Diner on a gray Tuesday evening, two lives were about to collide in the most unexpected way. Victoria Chen had been waiting tables for 8 years, her hands steady despite the exhaustion that seemed to settle deeper into her bones each day. She moved between the red vinyl booths with practiced grace, balancing plates and forcing smiles even when her feet screamed for rest. Across the dining room, 42-year-old businessman Patrick Donovan barely looked up from his phone as she approached his table. His expensive suit stood out against the diner's humble decor like a diamond in a coal mine. He had no idea that in less than an hour, this tired waitress with kind eyes would become the most important person in his world. Sometimes the most powerful stories begin in the most ordinary places, where strangers pass like ships in the night, unaware of the miracles waiting to unfold. Where are you watching from tonight? Victoria had learned to read people quickly in this business. The man in booth 7 was checking his Rolex every few minutes, his fingers drumming impatiently against the worn Formica table. She'd seen his type before, always in a hurry, always somewhere more important to be. His daughter, maybe 6 years old with bouncy curls, sat across from him coloring on the paper placemat with broken crayons. The little girl had asked for extra whipped cream on her hot chocolate, and Victoria had snuck her a little rainbow sprinkle on top when her father wasn't looking. More coffee. Victoria approached with the pot, noting how Patrick's jaw tensed when she accidentally bumped his chair. His phone conversation seemed urgent, all sharp words about quarterly reports and missed deadlines. The little girl, Sophia, she'd heard him call her, looked up with bright eyes. "Thank you for the sprinkles," Sophia whispered, giving Victoria a gap-toothed smile that could melt the coldest heart. "They taste like happiness." Victoria's own daughter Mia was about the same age, probably at home right now doing homework at their tiny kitchen table. The thought sent a familiar ache through her chest. She'd missed Mia's school play last week because of double shifts, and the guilt still sat heavy in her stomach like a stone. "Anything else I can get you?" Victoria asked, trying to catch Patrick's attention as he ended his call. He barely glanced up, his eyes scanning the check she'd left. "This is wrong. I ordered the salmon, not the chicken parmesan." His voice carried the kind of authority that came from years of people jumping to attention when he spoke. Victoria looked at her notepad, then back at the plate. The salmon sat perfectly cooked before him, untouched except for one bite. "Sir, you did order the salmon. That's what you have there." Patrick's eyes flashed with irritation. "Don't tell me what I ordered. I've been in business longer than you've been alive, sweetheart. I know what I asked for." The condescension in his voice made Victoria's cheeks burn, but she'd learned to swallow her pride years ago. "Tips paid for Mia's school supplies and her asthma medication." "Of course, sir. I apologize. What would you like me to bring instead?" The words tasted bitter, but Victoria forced them out with a smile. Sophia tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, you did ask for the fish. Remember, like the one we saw at the aquarium?" Her innocent observation only seemed to fuel Patrick's annoyance. "Sophia, eat your food." He turned back to Victoria, his expression growing colder. "Just bring me the chicken parmesan, and make it quick. Some of us have real jobs to get back to." The words hit Victoria like a slap. Real jobs. As if standing on her feet for 12 hours, serving ungrateful customers while worrying about making rent wasn't real enough. As if the calluses on her hands and the ache in her back were somehow less valuable than his expensive suits and corner office. But she nodded anyway, because that's what single mothers do. They endure, they survive, and they protect their children's futures one difficult customer at a time. 20 minutes later, Victoria returned with the chicken parmesan. Though Patrick had barely touched his original salmon, she watched him take a few distracted bites while typing furiously on his phone, his attention completely absorbed by whatever crisis was unfolding in his business world. Sophia had finished her hot chocolate and was now drawing what looked like a family of stick figures, a tall man, a little girl, and curiously, a woman with a kind smile wearing what might have been a waitress apron. "Is that your mommy?" Victoria asked gently, pointing to the drawing as she refilled Patrick's coffee cup. Sophia's face fell slightly. Mommy lives with the angels now. But she was nice like you. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Innocent and heartbreaking. Patrick's jaw tightened, but he didn't look up from his screen. Victoria felt her heart squeeze. She knew that particular brand of sadness. She'd worn it herself when Mia's father walked out 3 years ago, leaving behind only empty promises and unpaid bills. I bet your mommy was very special, she said softly, touching Sophia's shoulder. She made the best pancakes. Sophia continued, her crayon moving across the paper again. Daddy tries, but his are always too flat, and sometimes he forgets to put syrup on them. For just a moment, Patrick's typing slowed. Victoria caught a glimpse of something vulnerable in his expression before his phone rang again and the walls went back up. Yes, this is Donovan. Did the Henderson deal close? His voice was all business, as if his daughter's words hadn't just painted a picture of profound loss and imperfect love. Victoria finished her rounds, checking on her other tables, but her mind kept drifting back to booth 7. She'd been judging Patrick for his rudeness, but maybe there was more to the story. Maybe he wasn't just another entitled businessman. Maybe he was a widowed father drowning in responsibilities he never expected to shoulder alone. Still, understanding didn't excuse cruelty, and she thought of all the other waitresses who'd probably endured his sharp tongue without the armor of experience she'd built over the years. When it came time for the check, Victoria watched Patrick calculate the tip with the precision of someone who'd never had to count every penny. 15% exactly, not a cent more. But then, as he signed the receipt, his pen hovered over the tip line. For a moment, Victoria allowed herself to hope. Maybe he'd remember her kindness to Sophia, or the extra whipped cream, or the way she'd absorbed his rudeness without striking back. Instead, he drew a single line through the tip section and wrote "Service not satisfactory" in neat handwriting. Victoria stared at the receipt as Patrick gathered his things, his phone already pressed to his ear for another call. Sophia waved goodbye with her little hand, mouthing thank you for the sprinkles one more time. The zeros on the tip line seemed to mock Victoria's dwindling bank account and Mia's upcoming school field trip that she probably couldn't afford. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. But sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales when we least expect it. Victoria stood in the break room 15 minutes later, staring at the receipt in her trembling hands. $22. That's what 6 hours of Patrick's table had earned her. Just the base wage from the diner. Not a penny more. She thought about Mia at home, probably falling asleep over her math homework because Victoria couldn't afford a babysitter. Tomorrow was the deadline for the field trip payment, and Victoria had been counting on tonight's tips to cover it. Rough customer? Asked Betty, the older waitress who'd become like a mother to Victoria over the years, her withered hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He said my service wasn't satisfactory. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Betty, I brought him the wrong order, apologized, fixed it immediately, and was nothing but polite to his little girl. What more could I have done? Betty shook her head, her gray curls catching the fluorescent light. Honey, some people carry so much pain inside that they can only feel better by passing it along to others. Doesn't make it right, but it makes it human. She paused, studying Victoria's face. You've got that look again? The one you get when the electric bill's due and the tips have been thin. Victoria didn't have to answer. Betty knew the struggle. She'd raised 4 kids on waitress wages after her husband died in Vietnam. Mia's field trip is tomorrow. It's to the Science Museum, and she's been talking about it for weeks. I just double quotes she couldn't finish the sentence. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes hard work isn't enough? That sometimes people judge your worth by their own disappointments? Take table 12, Betty said gently. I'll cover your section for a bit. Sometimes the evening crowd tips better than the dinner rush. Victoria splashed cold water on her face in the tiny bathroom, looking at herself in the cracked mirror. 34 years old, and this was her life. Not the dream she'd had in college, back when she thought her education degree would lead to teaching children, not serving strangers who saw her as invisible. But dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford anymore. Not since Mia's father decided fatherhood was too complicated for his simple plans. She thought about Patrick's daughter, sweet Sophia with her gap-toothed smile and her drawings of angel mothers. Maybe Patrick was fighting his own battles, juggling single parenthood with the demands of a corporate world that didn't pause for bedtime stories or school plays. Maybe they weren't so different after all, both of them trying to build something good from the broken pieces life had handed them. But understanding didn't pay the rent. Compassion didn't fill Mia's backpack with lunch money or buy her the field trip permission slip that would let her see dinosaur bones and touch real meteorites with her classmates. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. Victoria straightened her shoulders and headed back to the dining room, where Patrick and Sophia were getting ready to leave. She had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, everything would change, that the man who dismissed her worth would soon owe her a debt that could never be repaid. Patrick was helping Sophia into her pink coat when it happened. The little girl had been chattering about her drawing, asking if they could stop for ice cream on the way home, when suddenly her words turned into choking gasps. A piece of hard candy she'd been saving from dinner had lodged in her throat, and her small hands flew to her neck in panic. Sophia. Patrick's voice cracked with terror as his daughter's face began turning blue. His business confidence crumbled in an instant, replaced by the helpless fear of a father watching his child suffocate. Help! Somebody help! The diner erupted in chaos. Customers turned in their seats. Someone shouted about calling 911. But Patrick felt frozen in a nightmare where time moved too slowly and nothing made sense. Sophia's eyes were wide with fear, her small body convulsing as she fought for air that wouldn't come. Then Victoria was there, moving with a calm purpose that cut through the panic like a lighthouse beam through fog. "I've got her," she said firmly, gently but quickly positioning Sophia. "Sir, I need you to step back and let me help her." Victoria had learned the Heimlich maneuver when Mia was born. Every single mother's worst fear is being alone when disaster strikes. Her hands moved with practiced precision, delivering the sharp upward thrust just below Sophia's ribcage. 1, 2, nothing. Patrick's face had gone as pale as his daughter's, and Victoria could hear his ragged breathing behind her. "Come on, sweetie," Victoria whispered, adjusting her position. "You're going to be okay." 3, 4, still nothing. But Victoria didn't stop. She couldn't stop. This beautiful little girl, with her gap-toothed smile and her drawings of angel mothers, was not going to become an angel herself. Not on Victoria's watch. 5. The hard candy shot out of Sophia's mouth like a cork from a bottle, clattering across the diner floor. Air rushed back into the child's lungs in a desperate, beautiful gasp that was the most wonderful sound Patrick had ever heard. Sophia began to cry. Big, healthy sobs that meant oxygen and life and another chance at tomorrow. Patrick dropped to his knees, pulling his daughter into his arms with shaking hands. "Oh God, Sophia, I thought I'd lost you. I thought. His voice broke completely. And for the first time since his wife's funeral, Patrick Donovan cried in public, not caring who saw his tears or his fear or his overwhelming gratitude. "She's okay," Victoria said softly, kneeling beside them both. "The scary part's over. You're both okay." She looked at Sophia, whose color was returning to normal. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" "My throat hurts," Sophia whispered, still clinging to her father. "But I can breathe again. Thank you for helping me." She looked up at Victoria with those bright eyes, now shining with tears, but alive. So beautifully alive. Patrick looked up at Victoria then, really seeing her for the first time all evening, not as an inconvenience or a servant, but as the woman who had just saved his daughter's life, the woman whose service he had deemed not satisfactory just minutes before. The same hands he had dismissed as unworthy of a tip had just performed a miracle that no amount of money could ever repay. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later, but Sophia was breathing normally and chattering about her adventure to anyone who would listen. The paramedics checked her over thoroughly, pronouncing her completely fine except for a slightly sore throat. Patrick insisted on following them to the hospital anyway, his protective instincts still in overdrive, but before they left, he turned to find Victoria. She was back at her station, quietly cleaning tables as if she hadn't just saved a child's life. When Patrick approached, she looked up with the same kind eyes that had noticed his daughter's drawings and sneaked extra sprinkles into hot chocolate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I don't know how to thank you," Patrick finally said, his voice still rough with emotion. "What you did? Saving Sophia ... I can never repay that." Victoria shook her head gently. "You don't need to thank me. Any parent would have done the same thing." She paused, then added quietly, "I have a daughter too. I know what it feels like to be terrified for them." Patrick felt the weight of his earlier behavior settling on his shoulders like lead. "About tonight, about the tip. I was completely out of line. I was having the worst day. Dealing with work stress, missing my wife, trying to be enough for Sophia when I feel like I'm failing her every day." He pulled out his wallet, extracting several bills. "Please, let me make this right." But Victoria stepped back, shaking her head. "I don't want your money. Not like this. Not out of guilt." Her voice was firm but not unkind. "What I want is for you to go home and hug that beautiful little girl extra tight tonight. Tell her you love her. Make those pancakes she was talking about, even if they turn out flat." Patrick's eyes welled up again. "She talks about her mother's pancakes all the time. I've tried so hard to replace what we lost, but I'm not very good at the day-to-day things. The bedtime stories, the cooking, the way her mother could make everything feel safe and magical." He looked down at his hands. "I've been so focused on providing for her financially that I forgot she needed me to actually be present. Being a parent is the hardest job in the world." Victoria said softly, "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that you love her, and she knows it. I could see it in her drawings. She drew you as this big, protective figure. That's how she sees her daddy." Sophia appeared at Patrick's side then, having overheard the conversation. "Daddy, will you make me pancakes tomorrow? I can help. Mommy always said the best pancakes are made with love, not just flour." Patrick knelt down and gathered his daughter close. "Yes, sweetheart, we'll make the best pancakes ever, and maybe we'll invite our friend Victoria and her daughter over sometime, if she'd like that." Victoria smiled, thinking of Mia at home, probably still awake despite the late hour. "I think we'd both love that very much." As they walked toward the door, Sophia turned back one more time. "Victoria, you're like a guardian angel, just like Mommy." And in that moment, everyone in Murphy's diner understood that sometimes the most extraordinary miracles happen in the most ordinary places. When strangers choose kindness over indifference, compassion over judgment. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales like this one. Thank you for joining us on this journey tonight.